afternoon. You're watching the English newscast on Future Television. I'm Linda Tamim, and these are today's top stories. Two Nusra leaders are killed as Hezbollah and Syrian army troops engage in fresh clashes with jihadi militants in the Kalamoun region. Yemen's Houthi fighters and Saudi forces trade heavy artillery and rocket fire in border areas, a day ahead of a proposed ceasefire. And over 1,000 migrants from Myanmar and Bangladesh are caught illegally trying to enter Malaysia. Hezbollah and Syrian army troops have engaged in fresh clashes with jihadi militants over a strategic hill in the Kalamoun region. Hezbollah-owned Al-Manar says two Nusra leaders died in the fighting. A number of reports say Hezbollah and the Syrian army have been steadily advancing in the battle and are close to establishing control over the hill. Control over the hill would allow the forces to have greater access to the nearby areas where jihadis were operating. The two sides have been engaged in deadly battles in Syria's Kalamoun region, which straddles Lebanon's eastern border, since last week. Hezbollah and the Syrian army have scored important gains in the fighting, driving militants from several towns, including Asal al-Ward and Al-Juba, and about a dozen posts. At least 3 Hezbollah fighters and dozens of jihadis have been killed since clashes erupted last week. The army has announced it has arrested 29 Syrians in the eastern Bekaa Valley for trying to infiltrate Lebanese territories. A military communique says the Syrians were apprehended in the border region of El Suwaidi. They were handed over to the involved authorities to take the necessary action against them. The army has taken strong measures on the border with Syria to stop the infiltration of gunmen and refugees. Health Minister Wael Abu Fahoud has called on political rivals to tackle the appointment of new top-ranking security officials with reason, urging them to safeguard the state institutions. Abu Fahoud spoke after talks with Prime Minister Tamam Slam at the Grand Sarai. He stressed on the importance of the security agencies amid the chaotic circumstances, urging rival parties not to involve the security agencies in the political rhetoric. Finance Minister Ali Hassan Khalil has warned that Lebanon will lose $1.2 billion if Parliament does not hold a legislative session soon. Khalil spoke during a ceremony to mark the opening of a new EU-funded auditorium at the Tax Administration building in Beirut. Khalil said he initially thought the deadlock at the legislative body was temporary back when he took office and that it would cease in a few months. The minister reiterated the need to elect a new president and the need to form a new cabinet that could fulfill its duties. However, he emphasized the importance of taking legislative action to avoid the financial damage. Christian parties have been boycotting legislative sessions since November, arguing that the country's political institutions should not operate as if there was a president. The Lebanese forces and the Free Patriotic Movement have agreed that they would keep boycotting sessions unless the top items on the legislative agenda were an electoral draft law and the expatriates' naturalization bill. The main Syrian opposition group in exile says it's not attending low-level consultations taking place in Geneva and hosted by the UN envoy to the war-torn country. Syrian National Coalition chief Khalid Khoja says President Bashar al-Assad's government is responsible for the Syrian conflict, now in its 5th year. The civil war has killed at least 220,000 people. Khoja spoke to reporters together with Luay Hussein, longtime Syria-based opposition activist and leader of Building the Syrian State Party, who recently fled to Turkey. Last Tuesday, UN envoy Staffan de Mistura launched the consultations in the hopes of restarting peace talks. 2 past rounds of direct negotiations between the Syrian government and opposition failed in early 2014. Yemen's Houthi fighters and Saudi forces have traded heavy artillery and rocket fire in border areas, a day ahead of a proposed ceasefire. The Houthis say they fired Katyusha rockets and mortars on the Saudi cities of Jizan and Najran after the Saudis hit Sada and Hajj provinces with more than 150 rockets. Planes from a coalition led by Saudi Arabia also struck positions of the Houthis in the central city of Taiz and in the oil-producing Marib province east of the capital, Sana'a. Moving on to Asia, Malaysia police say more than 1,000 migrants from Myanmar and Bangladesh have been found illegally trying to enter the country at the popular resort island of Langkawi. The migrants, many thought to be members of Myanmar's long-persecuted Rohingya Muslim community, landed on Langkawi late last night. Reports say all the illegal immigrants that have been arrested will be sent to detention centers. They were reportedly found in very poor condition, suffering from severe thirst and hunger. And coming up next, our very own Yumna Naufal discusses the Lebanese Oil and Gas Initiative. Stay tuned. To you, Yumna.
Thank you, Linda. Today we are discussing the Lebanese Oil and Gas Initiative, an NGO with an objective to develop a network of Lebanese experts in the energy industry and provide them a platform to inform Lebanese policymakers as well as Lebanese citizens on various issues facing the oil and gas industry. With us today is Diana Qaisi, Logi Advisor, Board Member, and MENA Coordinator for Publish What You Pay, as well as Jeremy Arbid, Logi Co-Founder and Journalist at Executive Magazine. Logi, of course, is what I'm referring to because they're the initials of the Lebanese Oil and Gas Initiative. Yeah. It's not just a name we gave it today. Diana, can you tell me where does the oil and gas industry stand as it is today?
Definitely. First of all, we know that we have gas, it's offshore, and there have been several seismic studies that have proven or led us to believe that we do have quite a quantity. We know that the government is working day and night to provide the legislative body so we can properly turn this natural resource into a blessing. At the same time, we also know that in so many other countries that had natural resources, this has turned into a nightmare. So it is our job as able civil society organizations, citizens, people, to make sure that we are enabled and we are decision makers in this process. We need to be part of the management of our resources. We need to govern our resources. We need to know. In a nutshell, we need to apply good governance principles, whether it's transparency, accountability, and all sorts, the rest of the principles on this evolving sector.
Well, you said nightmares, and I know this because, these issues, a lot of them come and stem from the fact that there is, like you said, no transparency.
Absolutely.
Or the government can probably use whatever money there is in order and not spread it accordingly. So what are the main challenges today?
Well, right now there's the main challenges right now are that the oil and gas industry is on hold because two needed decrees haven't been passed by the parliament.
What are they?
One for the exploration and production agreement and the other delineating the blocks. So the offshore area should be divided into 10 blocks, and so this is one of the two decrees. So there's been these delays for over 2 years now, and as civil society we want to know what is going on behind these closed doors. Why aren't these decrees being passed? And as Logi, one of the key issues that we want to push when we talk about the oil and gas sector is how we can move the sector forward, how we can work with the government. And it's a key message that we want to send to the parliament and to the government in general, is that we need to move this forward.
Have you tried to, because I know that Logi also works as a platform between civil society and government and the different stakeholders of the oil and gas industry, or people that are, involved in it. Have you reached out to government at all? Have you tried to?
Absolutely.
And if you did, what are the responses? What have been the responses?
Right, so as Logi, we've reached out to the LPA, the Petroleum Administration, and we've been asking them, but we have to understand that the Petroleum Administration is an advisory body, so decision making does not start or stop at their door. Throughout these delays, they've been quite active. It hasn't been wasted time. They've been going to conferences, they've been speaking at events. Really, one of the key things that they have been working on is managing expectations, which is also something that Logi wants to add to the conversation.
Okay. Yes. Does Logi deal with experts that are, because I know it said experts, does it deal with experts that can tell you, for example, when is drilling supposed to start? Because studies have been made in terms of, you said there's a demarcation problem, but studies have been made as to how much, for example, we can get from these resources, right? We have numbers, don't we?
Right.
Yeah.
So almost all of the offshore area, when we talk about surveying, has been 100% 2D seismic surveyed, and about 70% 3D seismic surveyed. That's a very good indication of where Lebanon might have oil and gas.
Okay,
but
you
until
have to translate that to me. Translate that to the viewers who don't really get what exactly that means.
Basically, it means it indicates where oil and gas resource deposits might be found, but until you go and drill, you have no idea. We have no idea how much resources we have.
Okay, so we know.
Let me add something
here.
Please. That it's not up to Logi only to try to decipher these very technical terms. It's more of getting this information that is highly technical at one level and trying to decipher it or put it in layman's terms so the rest of the public can be involved one way or another, either by learning more about this process, and which is very important, or by actually becoming enabled decision makers. Once you know what it's all about, then you can be a decision maker in the whole process. It's so important to be this link, the link between the highly expert, the experts and the citizens, the Lebanese citizens.
Right. And let me just add, if I may, that's the whole role of Logi in building this platform and connecting these experts, because one of the great things about Lebanon is that there are so many individuals that are working in the petroleum industry around the world, and that's what we want to do, is connect them back home to build a sustainable industry here.
Yes.
And part of that is informing and raising public awareness, informing government and lobbying them to build in sustainable policies for the industry and raising public awareness so that individuals,
can ask
civil
and
society,
their
the media,
and what's going on.
Exactly.
And
so
this
that people can know.
And this also, it is quite important for us to do that for the government's sake as well. It's building trust. In order to have such a flourishing sector,
between
you have to have
definitely
you have to have a very trusting environment. And what better way to do it than to disseminate all non-transparency, explanation, and providing all the sources of information.
So, right, because I know people generally, when you talk to them about the industry specifically, they said, well, people have always been stealing the money. It's not like we're ever going to see a dime. And there's been a lot of studies that have suggested that the oil and gas industry can actually help cover Lebanon's debts. We're talking in the billions. Now, moving forward, what would you guys recommend, Jana and Jeremy? How do we move forward from here?
Well, that's one of the key things that we need to work on as Logi, is lobbying the government to answer these questions when we talk about why have the decrees not been passed.
How are you going to do that? How are you going to get to the government specifically?
Well, we're connecting these experts to the government. We're connecting them to the public. We're working with media and with civil society to raise these issues, right? So you bring up the question that the oil and gas industry can be a game changer for Lebanon. Well, we have to manage expectations first. We can't say that there's going to be billions and billions and billions of dollars lying offshore, because we don't know yet.
Right.
But then on the other hand, we have to ask the pointed questions about how we need to manage these governments, these revenues. Questions of ownership of these revenues.
Definitely.
So Jana, in conclusion, because we only have 1 minute left.
Okay.
How do people get in touch? What can people do?
Okay, we are currently going to launch pretty soon our website, and it's quite interactive, the Logi website, and they can get in touch with us through there, and also they can get in touch with us through the social media. We're available on Twitter, Facebook. We have listservs. We leave our numbers. We have a white paper that has been issued. We're definitely always in congresses, conferences, attending and reaching out to people. One thing I'd like to reiterate here: people have questions, but we want to elevate this feeling of helplessness. It is your natural resources. This is your wealth, and you definitely have the right to manage it. This is the key message that we want to deliver to the Lebanese people through Logi.
Thank you so much for being with us. That was Jana Qaisi and Jeremy Arbid from the Lebanese Oil and Gas Initiative, NGO. Back to you, Linda.
Thank you, Yumna. This marks the end of our bulletin for today. Now for a reminder of our top stories. Two Nusra leaders are killed as Hezbollah and Syrian army troops engage in fresh clashes with jihadi militants in the Qalamun region. Yemen's Houthi fighters and Saudi forces trade heavy artillery and rocket fire in border areas, a day after a proposed ceasefire. And over 1,000 migrants from Myanmar and Bangladesh are caught illegally trying to enter Malaysia. That's it from us here at Future Television. That was Yumna Nofal and myself, wishing you all a very nice evening.